Johann Sebastian Bach wrote a Christmas oratorio that I love. It starts with the altos. By the way, that was beautiful this morning, Claire. Thank you, Jeremy, wherever you are, for directing. It starts with the altos singing, "And the glory of the Lord." And then everyone joins in, including the orchestra. "And the glory of the Lord." The basses shall be revealed, shall be revealed, and shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. And then comes the full chorus again, "For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken." It's called the Christmas Oratorio because it relates to the birth of Christ. All flesh shall see it together. It might be more appropriate to say all flesh shall experience it together. From my earliest memory, I've had a longing, and you have too, that one day we would experience peace on earth and goodwill toward all creation. If you ask a child, and I've shared this with you before, but it was a survey done years ago. If you ask a young child what he longs for, what his greatest wish is, it isn't for money and it isn't for toys. It's for peace on earth. It's for peace. Even children know we don't have it. And when we sing the Christmas Oratorio, "And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it," that's our longing. And we sometimes think it's already happened, and it hasn't. We think it's enough to celebrate it on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day with candlelights, and it isn't enough. We prematurely celebrate Christmas at the start of Advent by everybody wanting to sing Christmas carols, and it's premature. There's preparatory work that needs to be done, and it's essential for giving birth to the Christ. And when we realize in our own lives what's involved in giving birth to the Christ, in the sense of having to leave the metaphorical status quo and everything that we're used to, which is symbolized by Nazareth, and venturing out into the wilderness and into the Jericho road where there are robbers, and there's a lot of institutions and people that rob us of the vision of the glory of the Lord. Then it becomes difficult. There's this wonderful reading in God Calling, which is a meditation book that I use regularly. The reading is from February 13th, which happens to be Judy Robinson's birthday. I have it written right there. In a race, it is not the start that hurts, not the even pace of the long stretch. It is when the goal is in sight that heart and nerves and courage and muscle are strained almost beyond human endurance, almost to the breaking point. With Mary, whose soul magnifies the Lord, with Mary it came when she knocked on the metaphorical door of the inn at Bethlehem and said, "Do you have room for a pregnant lady to give birth?" And they said, "Nope." That would be, to me, the ultimate test. Just prior to birth, to have to be born amidst a bunch of cow shit. And I'm saying that bluntly because we try to romanticize it. And then it says, "So with you now." I mean, we're less than a week away. "So with you now. The goal is in sight. You need your final cry to me. Can you not see by the nerve and heart rack of the past few days that your race is nearly run? Courage. Courage. heed my voice of encouragement, and remember, I am with you always, even to the end of time. The force that was with us at the beginning being scientifically the Big Bang, the force of no thing that created all of us here, is still guiding us and still urging us with that longing to complete the race, to complete the journey, and arrive home, arrive at our ancestral home in order to give birth. I know you've heard this message before. With me it's been at least, well, it's been 30 years. That's basically preached the same message over and over again, using different stories, but not always different stories. I know you're up to here with Aquatico, and you're up to here with Field of Dreams and stuff like that. I know that. But it's the message that is the inner longing within all of us. It says, I will return home. Later on, an ensemble from the choir is going to sing a song we call Imago Dei. I want to share the words with you because it's sometimes hard to grasp the words at the same time that you're listening to the music. And I'm going to quote from it just briefly. Image of God, Imago Dei, alive and aware in all that exists. Alive and aware in all that exists. Imago Dei, image of God. We are this. Each breath we inhale is God's kiss. Each breath we inhale is God's kiss. Let the beauty of God now flow through us with the wisdom of eternal life to see the path without beginning and without end. To hear the first word, to see the light. That's what we're going to hear at the end of the commentary. The commentary is entitled, Are We There Yet? Well, you've all experienced it if you have kids and have gone on any journey at all. It starts about 10 minutes into the journey. Are we there yet? It's kind of tiring to say, no, we're not, or to play word games with them and to say, yes, we're here, but are we there? No, we're not there, we're here. The paradox of the question in terms of our spiritual life is, yes, we are there, and no, we are not there. Yes, we are there in that the eternal light of God's image through which we live and move and have our being has been with us from the beginning of time. It's always here. The kingdom of heaven is in our midst. Yes, we're here. No, we're not there yet because we've fallen asleep to the fact that it's here. And the sleepful state that we're in often deprives us of experiencing what has always been present. I know that's redundant, but I think you get it, and I think you understand it. Andrew Cohen, wrote a book called Evolutionary Enlightenment. I'd urge you to read it. It's one of the best that I've read in recent years. Evolutionary Enlightenment. Let me quote briefly from it, and I'm going to make some side comments about what Andrew Cohen is writing. When you have the profound awakening that you are part of a cosmic process that's going somewhere, you find yourself falling more deeply in love with what's possible than you are with what's already happened. Last night at 11:40, Miles Benjamin Parker was born. He's our grandson. For 9 months, Jessica, our daughter, has been anticipating this birth that happened late last night. She's been eagerly and sometimes impatiently awaiting the time, particularly in the last week, impatiently. But impatiently awaiting this birth. And all of you who are mothers know exactly what I'm talking about. She went into labor yesterday morning at 7 o'clock. She had 16 hours of labor. And during that time, she called Susan regularly, or Susan called her. And the sound of her voice seemed to convey the message, is it worth all of this? It's very important in terms of birth, and it's very important in terms of Advent. Is it worth all this? Is it worth this challenge? Is it worth this pain? Is it worth these contractions? And then at close to 1 o'clock, she called. Miles was born, and she was nursing her baby son. And she was crying. And she said, I'm already so in love with him. All right. How can such pain caused by this little kid that's in her womb create such love? And that's always the case. At least most of the time it's the case. Falling more deeply in love with what's possible than you are with what has already happened. The first thing that Susan said after we got the phone call was, boy, is their life going to be different. That's the point. You know, that's why we don't need to just say, when we say, are you ready? It's pretty easy to say, yeah, I'm ready, but I don't want to experience the labor pain. And Mary didn't say, my soul doth magnify the Lord just so long as it fits with the rest of the folks in Nazareth. Jessica was magnifying the Lord. I mean, every woman who's given birth, everybody who's experienced birth is magnifying the Lord because it's the mystery, a new mystery in our presence. And the fact that we love it unconditionally means we can do that. We can do that with every single human being. That's what we long for. The quote goes on. I don't need to quote the rest. We lose it somehow. There's a movie that and you've heard of it before, but it begins this way. Our choir has sung it. From the day we arrive on the planet and blinking. I mean, this is a story of every one of the beginning of our lives. The beginning of Miles' life. From the day we arrive on the planet. By the way, that's his red rose. And the white rose. Life and death. Death and rebirth. That's for Les Soizak. One of the great members of this community who helped to start snack packs. He and Rita have fed thousands of children because of their commitment to do Jesus' work, to feed the hungry. Yeah. His memorial, by the way, is 6 o'clock this coming Wednesday afternoon here. But from the day we arrive on the planet and blinking step into the sun, there's more to be seen than can ever be seen. There's more to do than can ever be done. There's far too much to take in. More to find than can ever be found. But the sun rising high in the sapphire sky takes great and small on the endless rounds in in the circle of life. Well, that's what we're involved in. But we get caught up in something that separates us from the circle of life. We, particularly as human beings, get caught up in something that separates us from that original, radiant burst of light from whence we come. It's getting cold in here. Thank you for turning it up. One of the great classics is Homer's Odyssey, and in that journey home, it's a journey home from Troy, wandering through the Aegean Sea, almost endlessly wandering through the Aegean Sea. It's a perfect metaphor of life and a perfect metaphor of Advent. And you might remember that one of the places they get caught up is, well, because of Poseidon's wrath, you know, the god of the sea, he blows their vessel off course, and they end up on the island of the Lotus Eaters. You might remember that. If you don't, it's worth reading again. It was required reading. They end up in the land of the Lotus Eaters. And the Lotus Eaters were nice folks. I mean, they welcomed them, and they loved them, and they fed them this very tasty treat from the lotus leaves. And as soon as they ate the lotus leaf, you get it? As soon as they ate the lotus leaf, they forgot the journey home. I'm wondering how many lotus leaves there are in our lives. You know, it's too easy to wrap it up in a little package and call it sin. But there are so many lotus leaves in my life that have gotten me distracted that I daren't mention, even to try to start mentioning them, I'd be embarrassed. But I will mention this, and it's very simple and non-threatening. Susan and I meditate almost every day with emphasis on almost. We like to read the Tao Te Ching, and we like to spend about 25 to 30 minutes in quiet. We just sit there together in quiet at what we call our Holy of Holies. It's a very precious time. I also like to read books. The most recent one being The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That trilogy. Very good writing, very violent. The opposite of meditation. And I like my cup of coffee. So the cup of coffee, I know this sounds simple. I could name some more challenging ones. The cup of coffee and the book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the whole trilogy. I finished the whole trilogy. The Girl with whatever it is, the Kick the Hornet's Nest is the final one, I think. That is a real distraction. And it prevents me from focusing on my meditation. Now, you might think, well, meditation, you don't need to do that every day. It's not all that important. But meditation is what gets me in touch with the light from whence I come up. Prayer, you might call it, but it's sitting quietly. And it gets me in touch with this deeper power. Both of us know that. And you know it. There are times when my expectation of what might happen during meditation doesn't happen, and that's the rationale I use for drinking coffee and reading The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Knowing that the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is violent, and knowing that coffee isn't good on my prostate. Right, Joseph? I don't want to belabor this example now that I'm talking about my prostate. Susan just sitting there shaking her head. But get distracted. We start eating the lotus leaves and we forget where home is. In fact, we find such satisfaction in the lotus leaves that the lotus leaves become home. And that's dangerous, particularly when we want Christ to be born in our lives. Let's go back to the Lion King. Simba was the only begotten child of Mufasa, the great king. And he knows he's going to inherit the kingdom. But his mother and father have told him, you're going to inherit the kingdom, the Pride Land. You're going to be the king of the jungle or something like that. And it's an incredible responsibility. And Jesus says, you're going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because you are the light of the world. That's what you are. That's what we are. You're the light of the world. You're going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. You're going to give birth to the Christ in the same way that Simba's going to become the king of those Pride Lands. And in the process, Simba feels this, did I say pride? He wants to test it. Test this power, this newfound authority. So he goes to the elephant graveyard, where the hyenas are. Now, I'm not going to go too long on this, but I've ended up a lot of times in my life in the graveyard. Dead ends. Dead ends. Where the metaphorical hyenas chomp at you. His father rescues him. And that's the nice news. That's what's called grace. If we turn to it, God rescues us. The force rescues us. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of time. Just call on my name and I'll be with you. That's the message that needs to be absorbed, especially when we're in the graveyards. And then Simba runs into more trouble. Scar, Mufasa's brother, who's a wily rascal, starts a stampede of wildebeest while Simba is down in the valley, and Mufasa is forced to rescue his son. There's a lot of biblical messages in here. To rescue his son, and in doing so, Mufasa dies. He's killed. Scar immediately shows up and tells Simba that he's responsible for the death of the great king. And saying, you should go into a far country. That's what they call it in the story, a far country. It's much like the story of the prodigal son, which you find in Luke. You need to go into the far country. You don't deserve to be in the Pride Land anymore. Get out of here. You should be ashamed of yourself. Whoa. And he leaves. But he doesn't forget. He tries to forget. And he gets to the land. I don't know what the land's called, but in that land he finds a meerkat and a warthog. And it's a cute part of the movie. If you've seen the movie, you think, oh, this is sweet. He found some new friends. But think for a minute. This is the inheritor of the Pride Land, the kingdom of heaven, you might say, in terms of what the metaphor represents. He's destined to be king. He eats spiritual food. He absorbs spiritual teaching, the highest spiritual teaching, in order to awaken to his inheritance, what he is intended to be. And instead he settles for bugs and worms. Do you get the message there? And too often we settle for bugs and worms. I'm afraid that we settle for bugs and worms at times. Even in our religion, we think our beliefs are substitute for the real thing. And slowly he adjusts to his new life of conformity, which in this story of the birth and Advent is called Nazareth. He settles for the conformity of worms and bugs and warthogs and meerkats, as cute as they are, I know. until one day he gets knocked on the head by Rafiki, is that his name? By Rafiki, the baboon shaman. And if you remember the movie, Rafiki literally comes up and bonks him on the head. And he takes him and leads him to a pool. And in that pool, Simba sees a reflection of Mufasa. And Rafiki says, this is the point of Christmas. Rafiki says, he's in you. He's in you. You can never deny that. He's in you. And the first response that Simba makes, and that so many of us make, including myself, is, oh, shucks. Can't be within me. I'm too full of shame. Too full of guilt of what I've done. Too filled with things that simply cannot be forgiven. You get it? I think all of us have been there at one time or another. And what Rafiki reminds us of is God's grace. I don't care what you've done. It's not an invitation to do bad. I don't care what you've done. I love you. I will always love you. And you must return to the tribe land. You must return to your ancestral roots, to Bethlehem, so you can give birth to what you were created to be. Your visions, your purpose, your goals, the longing that you have within you, the longing that I have within me, that's the call. Frank left with his grandson. Frank started this church 44 years ago, had a vision. I came here 30 years ago, had a vision. I still have that vision. Still have the vision. That represented here is the possibility of what the church can become. Look at the people here. I mean, we're crowded. We're standing room, sitting, we're packed. Yeah. That should say something to all of us. It doesn't say, oh, let's just build a bigger church. It says, whatever it is that is attracting people here needs to be responded to. We must respond. And that's what preoccupies me as your pastor. What do I do to respond? And what I do to respond costs too much money. This isn't a stewardship sermon, by the way. It's the excuses that we make for not doing our vision. I think my vision is dependent upon your response to my vision, and what I have to get is, it isn't. Nor is your vision dependent upon my confirmation that it's a good vision. We are to give birth to the Christ. That's the general end point of it all, which is the beginning point as well. So Simba goes back to the tribe land, which he finds devastated. It's arid. There's nothing growing. Nothing growing. And Scar is driven off by the very hyenas that he thought were his allies. Let me say that again. Scar is driven off by the very hyenas that he thought were his allies. And as soon as they're driven off, the guilt, the shame, the rains start. And the flowers start to grow. And the trees start to grow. And the food returns. And their stores are, their homes and their lives are replenished. And the last scene of the movie has Simba, now fully grown, walked to the top of the rock overlooking the Cry Land. And it's much like the ending of Bambi, if you can remember the ending of Bambi. They're both on the same metaphorical pinnacle overlooking the whole cosmos. And Simba looks up at the cosmos, and the clouds are beginning. It's nighttime. It's like the winter solstice. It's like Christmas. He looks up at the sky, and the clouds are beginning to clear, and through the clouds he sees stars. And one of them is especially large. Sounds like a familiar story, doesn't it? And one of them is especially large. And from that large star comes the words from his parent. You remember what the word was? Remember. Remember. The preparatory work that we do for Advent is to remember who we truly are. So we, like Ebenezer Scrooge, can awaken from our darkened chambers of separation and throw open the shutters and let in the light and ask the boy down on the street, "What day is it?" And he shouts back, "Christmas Day." And Scrooge says, "I haven't missed it. I haven't missed it." Nor can we.